Customer captures what a waitress was doing to an old man's food behind the counter. Who doesn't like to have a lavish and tasty breakfast before starting a long day? In the hope to catch a plate of delicious breakfast, an old man from Texas went to the Waffle House in Lamarck, but the meal wouldn't go as planned. A waitress working in the Waffle House would do something unimaginable to the food in an old man's plate that you'll always think twice before ordering in the future. And when another lady saw what this waitress was up to, she secretly took a video, and it went viral. Laura owns a salon in Lamarck, Texas. One of her favorite food joints has been the Waffle House, and she loves visiting the place. But she had no idea she would witness something so strange when she walked into the Waffle House on the morning of March 3rd. The day at the Waffle House was a very busy day full of customers in wait for a delicious breakfast. The Waffle House has been one of the most famous places in the city of Lamarck, but even a day with people all around didn't stop this waitress from doing what she did. Just like any other day, Laura had ordered her cup of coffee. She was enjoying every sip and looking at people around her doing their own thing. That's when she noticed the weird behavior of one of the waitresses. Laura caught the waitress red-handed when the latter did something unimaginable. And the first thought that came to Laura's mind was to take a video of what the waitress was doing so she could show it to everyone. The waitress in question here is Ivani Williams, an 18-year-old woman who's been working at the Waffle House for quite some time now in order to collect and save money for her college. But everything changed after the 3rd of March. Laura had been noticing Ivani for quite some time now, during every visit she'd made to the Waffle House. Laura always had her eyes on Ivani because she always thought she was up to something, and on that day she was proven right. On the morning of the 3rd, a very aged customer entered the Waffle House and took a seat right in front of where Ivani was working. He ordered a plate of ham and was waiting for his order in the hopes of having a different and tasty meal than his usual routine. Since the Waffle House was always a very busy place, it took a lot of effort for Ivani to keep up with the work. She used to work very hard and try to make the customers happy, but what she did with the old man was unbelievable. Ivani didn't notice that her actions were being noticed. She went on with what she'd planned, unaware that someone's eyes were on her, not just looking at what she was doing, but also capturing every action. Laura was taken aback when she saw what Ivani was up to. She couldn't believe her eyes. She'd known Ivani was up to something weird when she saw her move her eyes furtively in all directions before continuing. Laura had never seen someone do any such thing before. She was just astonished and didn't understand what to say or do. The only thing running in her mind was Ivani really doing what she was seeing, and why? Laura started to think about why Ivani was doing what she was doing to the old man's food. Maybe it was the rush hour that was going on and it was too much pressure, even though she'd been trying hard to keep up. And why had Ivani chosen the old man to do what she was doing? There were a number of customers in the diner at the time, but why had she picked the old man? Did she have a hidden purpose? The old man that had come into the Waffle House was no ordinary man. His name was Adrian Charpentier, and he had a very reputable position among the whole service crew in Lamarck, but Ivani had no idea. All the while, Ivani had been talking to the old man who was sitting in front of her, behind the counter she was standing at. She had indulged him into conversations and was secretly doing what she had to do, hiding his plate behind the counter. Ivani was so into what she was doing that when her cook called out her name to pick up the orders that were pending one after the other, she didn't listen to him and continued talking to the old man. Ivani had been hiding behind the counter and her plan was in action, but she didn't know that Laura was looking at everything she was up to and her phone was capturing it all. Laura tried to overhear what the two were possibly talking about so she could know if there was a reason behind Ivani's actions. But she couldn't hear a word since the place had such a huge crowd. Laura noticed the man had an oxygen tank he was carrying around him. This meant that he was ill and having trouble breathing. Then she saw Ivani come even closer to the man to hear what he was saying. As soon as the man said something to Ivani, she knew she was being asked to do something by the man, but she wasn't sure she was allowed to take action like that. Ivani ignored everyone else around her except for the old man, on whom all her concentration was. She seemed oblivious to the fact that a lot of other customers were also waiting for their order to be delivered and the work was pending. The old man had asked for Ivani for very strange help, and that's how this story began. That is how Ivani took action. The old man had told Ivani that he was too weak and his hands had no strength. He had ordered ham, but it was becoming impossible for him to cut it up, and that's why he wanted help. Ivani took the old man's plate and kept it in front of her. He couldn't understand why she'd pulled away from his breakfast plate and what she was up to. He'd asked for help, not to cancel his breakfast altogether. Ivani ignored everything, the questioning customers, her boss staring at her, and the cook who was shouting for the food that was ready to be given to the customers. She decided to help the man first. Ivani understood that it was getting difficult for the old man to cut the slices of the ham, so she decided to do that. She took the plate and started cutting the ham further into smaller pieces so the man could eat it properly. This was exactly what was going on behind the counter when Laura thought that Ivani was up to something mischievous. She cut the ham and gave it to the old man and was unaware how this little act was going to change her life forever. Laura had never seen something like this and she knew exactly what to do. She posted the video online to her Facebook page and wanted everyone to see how lovely people could be. Laura just asked for her bill and before it could arrive, her phone started to buzz and there was no stopping. Within a few minutes, Ivani had become Facebook famous and someone very famous was noticing her story too, only to give her the surprise of her life. Ivani, on the other hand, was totally aware she was becoming Facebook famous and Laura was watching. She had no idea how many people had known of her now and were in total awe of her, especially that one famous person. Even till date, Ivani feels that what she did was very normal and nothing great. She thinks that it was her duty and responsibility to help the customer in front of her, and so she did it without hesitation. She would have done it for anybody. Laura posted an incredibly kind post for Ivani saying, without hesitation she took his plate and began cutting up his ham. This may seem small, but to him I'm sure it was huge. I'm thankful to have seen this act of kindness and caring at the start of my day while everything in this world seems so negative. In just a few days, the Facebook post had garnered a whopping 99,000 likes and 47,000 shares. But this was just the start of Ivani's good days, who was unaware what was next. Indeed, Ivani's mother was very proud of her and knew she'd raised her daughter right. Ivani would have been elated by the support that the social media had shown for her, but what would have mattered most would have been seeing the proud mother. All the recognition that Ivani was suddenly getting was indeed deserved. She was worthy of all the support and her act of kindness showed it very clearly. Not many people bother about a stranger in today's world. Since everyone was in support of Ivani, the city decided to do something for the kind soul, who was just a teenager. What happened next changed her life in so many ways. When Ivani had thought the fame was all over, she was in for a surprise. While she was working in the Waffle House one day, Mayor Bobby Hawking dropped by. But why would such a busy person be there? The mayor had hidden something behind his back and entered the diner. He handed Ivani a big check for the kind soul she was. She couldn't believe her luck. How did the mayor even know about her? The check was from none other than the Texas State University, which has sent her $16,000. It was a scholarship that would help Ivani in fulfilling her dream of going to college and finishing her higher education. For a person of Ivani's age, it could surely get difficult to make your ends meet financially, let alone the dream of going to college. But she worked hard and was kind. A simple act of kindness won't cost you anything but could give you everything. And maybe Ivani did what she did for Adrian as her duty, but for Adrian it meant everything. The old man had been worried and upset about the deteriorating condition of his health, and the fact that somebody could be so polite and kind to him gave him happiness. You have no idea what the other person is dealing with in their life, so you should be always kind to everyone. Adrian had been struggling with his weakness all this while, and Ivani had no idea. I can hold a fork fine and dandy, but to cut it looks like I'm gonna stab somebody, he said. Ivani commented, I was just like, sure, if you need help, that's what I'm here for. My cook was calling my name to pick up food I had on the board, but I continued to cut his ham. It's just something I'd do for anybody. The mayor was also touched by Ivani's act. He commented, somebody tagged me and it just touched my heart. It's so wonderful that the younger generation cares about the older generation.